It first began with the death of a fish seller. Now thousands of Moroccans have taken to the streets. They're angry about government corruption and say they want jobs and better public services. Will they get what they're demanding, and where will it end? This is Inside Story. Hello and welcome to the program. I'm Darine Abu Gaida. Thousands of people have taken to the streets of Morocco demanding access to health services, jobs and investments. Political protests are rare in the kingdom, but tensions in the town of Al Hoceima have been simmering since October following the death of a fish seller. Mohsin Fiqir was crushed in a compressor truck while trying to save swordfish that had been confiscated by police. Al Hoceima is in the northern Reef region. It's ethnically Berber, and people say they've long been marginalized. We'll bring in our guests in a moment, but first, Imran Khan has more on the latest unrest.
This young man has become the face of a protest movement that condemns corruption. The government accuses some of the activists in the northern Rif region of being separatists with help from foreign backers. But the movement, known by the name حراك, rejects that allegation and says its demands are legitimate.
The degree of solidarity, nationally and internationally, is a living proof that our demands are lawful. Some of our rights are guaranteed in the man-made laws and cherished in the divine ones.
Days before the protest, security was increased. Police forces and gendarmerie checkpoints were set up to check traffic entering the city. And earlier this week, the Moroccan government released a statement acknowledging the protests in the Rif. It's urging officials to move quickly to implement a development strategy aimed at providing jobs.
In light of these discussions, the Cabinet reiterated that all government sectors, in line with their respective duties towards citizens, shall not falter in taking all necessary measures to swiftly implement the planned projects.
Meanwhile, protests like these are continuing, where locals have been waving their own banners and flags and chanting in their Berber and Arabic languages. Nasser has revived a movement that began when his friend was killed a few months ago. It sparked outrage across the region. Mohsin Fiqir was a fisherman who died inside a garbage truck while trying to retrieve fish confiscated by police. It was a turning point for a region where people say they've been marginalized since independence from Spain. The challenge now is to make sure that the demonstrations and movement remain peaceful. Imran Khan for Inside Story.
Let's bring in our panel. In Rabat, we have Mohammed Shtatu. He's a professor at Mohammed V University. Joining us on Skype from Al Hoceima is Omar Radi. He's a freelance journalist. And joining us from Boston is Mohammed Masbah. He's a political sociologist with the Foreign Affairs think tank at Chatham House. Welcome to all of you. Omar Radi, if I may start with you, since you're in Al Hoceima, can you tell us what you're seeing with these protests?
Well, I see that the whole city is engaged in this movement. This is very impressive. Everybody, before the protest and before the general strike, was talking about what will happen, because they had also a concern that they were fearing that the police and all these brigades coming from other regions of the country here in reinforcement to the local police would attack their march. And in the meantime, they were preparing the general strike at 3 o'clock. A huge number of shops, of cafes and restaurants closed and joined the movement in preparation of the march that would start at 6 o'clock.
When you speak of a movement, what kind of numbers are you talking about here?
I mean, in the main streets of Al Hoceima, all the cafes were closed, all the restaurants were closed, and the snacks were closed, and at 6 o'clock there were tens of thousands of people in the streets, and still waiting for other people coming from the villages surrounding Al Husayma, like Inzur and Bni Bukidar. Some of them were coming on their feet.
Would you say, just one more question to you, would you say that so far this is limited to Al Husayma, or it's spilling over to other parts of the Reef region? What are you seeing?
Well, the Muhsin Fikri was not living in Al Husayma. He was from Imzur, a village 30 kilometers far from Al Husayma, and the movement started there as well as in Al Husayma and other villages. There are 10 villages around Husayma that constitute this part of the Reef region, and they all involved in the movement. There were in the Reef. There also another city that is one of the two main cities, Al Husayma and Nador. Nador show a lot of solidarity with people when Al Husayma people take to the streets.
Okay, so let me cross over to Rabat. Mohammed Shtatu, can you tell me how you read the situation right now in El Reef?
Well, I think the situation is quite explosive, though in a peaceful manner, because I think the story of the Reef is a story of long bad blood between central government and the region of the Reef. It goes back to the last century, and even before. Last century, in 1958, there was an uprising, military uprising in the area that was crushed in blood at the time. And the Reefi people have kept a very bad image of the central government since then. It was during the time of the late King Hassan II, who called the people of the Reef in a speech, in a very official speech, he called them barbarian, Apaches. That's the word he used. And they still remember that word, and they still remember that it was very unprofessional on his part to say something about his people in this part of the world. Now, what is to remember is that since then, the whole area of the Reef has been totally marginalized. There was development in every part of Morocco, but not that part of this country. And people did not say anything about it because they were living and traveling abroad and working abroad as immigrants in different parts of Europe. But now, there is a high employment among the young people, and these young people need jobs, and there are no jobs available. So I think what the government needs to do at the moment to have some sort of reconciliation, if they want to, is really to have some sort of Marshall Plan, economic Marshall Plan for the region, create soft industries, create factories and create jobs, and also the infrastructure. The infrastructure is horrendous in that part of the world. There are no roads, there are no hospitals, and when I say hospitals, we have to remember that the Spaniards used chemical weapons during the war. In the 1926.
We'll talk about the possibility of what you are saying is reconciliation in just a moment. But first, just back to the situation on the ground right now. Mohammed Masbah in Boston. So people there saying that what they're demanding are socio-economical reforms. Some in the government accusing some of the activists that have come out in the Reef region of being what they call separatists with help from foreign backers. The activists deny this. What do you make of that?
Yeah, actually, this was a mistake done by the parties of the majority that soon after they just rejected it and called for a different, in a different statement that they understand the demands of people in the Reef region. So it was, I think, a big mistake that could lead to the escalation. And in my opinion, authorities understood that if they will crack down heavily the protest, it might lead to escalation and in a situation that cannot be controlled. So this is the reason, in my opinion, that explain why authorities yesterday did not intervene heavily. So it was the same It reminds us to the 20 February movement in 2011, which is the which was the largest protest movement in the modern Moroccan history. That authorities understood very well that the crackdown is counterproductive. So the situation now is that there is no mediator between the protesters and the state. Of course, the official human rights organization requested that it is ready for mediation, but up to now there is no actual actions on the ground. We need a brokers that brings and bridge the views of the different point of view. If we might return back 1 year earlier, in Tangier last year, there was a similar protest about the increase in life costs. And the former Prime Minister, Abdullah bin Kiran, actually went to Tangier and he met with the local population and he brokered a deal with them that ended
so
and
how likely do you think that a deal is going to be brokered at this point, Mohammed Masbah?
Yeah, for the current government is weak, and the Prime Minister lacks the same charisma as the former one has. So this is one price of the regime has to pay when they kicked out Abdullah bin Kiran, who was really a charismatic leader who was able to broker such and intervene in this kind of difficult situation. The current Prime Minister is a withdrawal personality that does not have does not take initiatives. So this is a real challenge for authorities to come up with someone or an authority that can broker a fair deal with between protesters and authorities.
Omar Radi, what kind of deal are protesters looking for at this point, and will they be willing to accept a deal that is potentially put forward to them if Morocco gets to that point?
Well, the protesters here are keeping in mind that in 2011 people believed that the power gave us a lot of promises that the power did not respect in a second time, and now they don't want to go to a dialogue and stop their movement. They want to keep up the pressure from the streets while they're having the dialogue, which is refused by the central power. They're also asking, as a condition, to free 10 of their comrades that are held in jail since more than 1 month in a riot that took place in Imzourn, the main the village of Mohsin Fikri. So they know the song. They heard it in 2011. So they don't trust the central government. They need more guarantees. And these are the formal conditions. For their conditions, it's very easy. They need development, local development.
Okay, let me ask Mohammed Shtatu in Rabat. After the 2011 election, there was an attempt by the king and the party to institute economic reforms at the time. There was a promise to create more jobs. There was a promise to raise education levels. So has that not filtered down at all to Rif?
I think what is needed right now, before we even talk about economic package, is an all-out dialogue. What I mean by an all-out dialogue is that the Prime Minister and some of the ministers of this government and some people from the political parties ought to go there and meet with the population, with the associations, with the organization, human rights organization, and talk to them about what are their needs, what are their demands, and create this kind of feeling that I will call building bridges of confidence and trust, because there is no trust at the moment between the people of the Reef and the government as it is, especially when the government denounced these movements in the Reef. So I think the first thing is to do that, to build the bridges, and then later on discuss what is needed in the area in the Reef. Reef is not only Al-Husayma, it's many other parts, and all of them are poor, all of them lived in the past from immigration. Now there is no immigration and they are back, and the young people are educated and they have degrees and they have no jobs. So these things have to be taken into consideration, and then the infrastructure. And then later on, probably in the light of these discussions, in the light of this all dialogue, all-out dialogue, then come up with a kind of an economic package on a long term.
Mohammed Masbah, do you agree with that? Is it an issue of trust at this point that needs to be addressed? That needs to be addressed first of all?
Yeah, absolutely. I totally agree with this idea. I think the most important challenge now is to gain trust in the state institutions. And now with 6 years after the 2011 constitutional reform and the recent political setbacks, I think not only the Reef who start to lose confidence in the state institution, but there is a widespread anger within society that might escalate and rise other protests outside the Reef.
What do you mean by that exactly?
So, in my opinion, I mean by that people, there is some specificities and peculiar things about the Reef, but the deep reasons that pushed the people in the Reef to protest are similar all over the country. Corruption, abuse of power, return of authoritarianism. These are the symptoms of a deep dysfunctional state regime institution. So, in my opinion, I think if authorities will not go for a dialogue first, and then to have a not only promises but a feasible and real project for development, socio-economic development that take together the infrastructure but also the industrial plants, I don't think that the situation will appease at any time soon.
Mohammed Shtatu, you're sitting and talking to us from Rabat. Surely you can tell us what officials there have done to implement development strategies in order to provide jobs. That's one of the biggest grievances that some of the youth have.
Well, there are no jobs, and there are all these young people who are in the street or in the cafes sitting without any jobs. I think because most of the jobs or most of the plants went to other parts of Morocco, what I call the Golden Triangle, which starts in Agadir to Tangier and moves on to Fez, including Rabat and Casablanca. That's where all the industry is. The Reef area has nothing, and these young people have no jobs, so they are sitting most of the time in cafes, or they are on their computers, and they are very unhappy. And it's a situation which cannot continue. I think it's high time the government sort of meets the needs of this population, creates industry, investment, move the investment from the Golden Triangle into these areas that are marginalized. And the marginalization is over 60 years. It's a long period of time. While Europe has helped for a while with employment, now there is no help from Europe, and there is no hope. So it's a kind of dead end. The youth is meeting with difficulties. They cannot get married, they cannot get jobs, they cannot feed themselves, they cannot feed their families, and it's a big problem. I think that's why I'm using the Marshall Plan for these marginalized areas. The government has to direct all the investment now to this area to create possibilities of good living and dignity.
Omar Radi, where does the protest movement in Al-Hoceima go to? What are their next steps?
Well, they still keeping the pressure by protesting every week, and they are waiting for a proposition from the government, especially also from the official human rights office. They're waiting for a concrete proposition, but they need their friends. They say they need to free the people that have been held in jail, and also to free the city and the region from the militarization signs. They say militarization for the presence, for the exhibition of the police and the camps of the police. This is very immediate for them, and then they won't go home. They will stay every week in the streets and wait for a proposition of dialogue and to have conditions to have a good dialogue and to recover the trust between those parts, because what happened in the 3 last weeks made them lose more confidence in the state's propositions.
Mohammed Masbah, looking at the bigger picture and from the outside in, Morocco, one would assume, is very keen to protect its image as a success story of the Arab uprisings, after it saw what happened in neighboring Tunisia, for example.
That's correct, actually, but until 2016, until the last elections, Morocco actually was affected by the setbacks in the other Arab countries since the Egyptian coup in 2013. So actually, there is no incentives for Morocco to keep in that line of democratic reforms. So we have seen actually recently some setbacks toward the old practices that we thought that will disappear, but actually it returned, and we are in a situation similar to pre-2011 situation where people went to the street to protest. So I
when
think
you say that you have seen setbacks from Boston, what do you mean by that? What kind of setbacks are you referring to?
Actually, the last elections was a good sign of it. The Prime Minister, who was Abdel Ben Kiran, who led the Party of Justice and Development, was assigned to form a government, but the other partners close to the palace put the stick on the wheels of the government. So after 6 months of a political deadlock, then they kicked out Ben Kiran, and they bring another personality from the same party, but a weak person, to have a weak government to be controlled by the palace.
All right.
So actually, what happened is that during this void, when we didn't have a government, that the protests in Al-Hoceima spread.
Just for the sake of time, we are running out of time. Let me just give the final word to Mohammed Shtatu. Where do you see this going to next?
Well, I think I'll come back to what I said earlier about...
Just very briefly.
The situation could get really bad if there is nothing done. Because if there is nothing done, the situation can get really bad. I think what is needed at the moment is the government to come out and not be shy about talking to the people and initiating kind of dialogue, and all-out dialogue, as I called it. Because I think people need to see these ministers and the head of the government in the city, not outside of Rabat, or not in Rabat, talking to them or denouncing their acts. I think we should send these people in the field, and they should see the things for themselves and talk to the population so the population can feel that they are important in the eyes of the government, that the government is going to do something, not just words. They should move to deeds.
All right. On that note, we'll leave it there. Thank you very much for joining us, Muhammad Shtatu, Omar Radi, and Muhammad Masbah. Thank you for watching. You can see this program again anytime by visiting our website, aljazeera.com. For further discussion, you can go to our Facebook page. That's facebook.com/AJ Inside Story. And you can also join the conversation on Twitter. Our handle is @AJ Inside Story. From myself and the whole team here in Doha, goodbye for now.